By August 1917, the Ypres salient had become a waterlogged nightmare. Continuous artillery fire had churned the Belgian farmland into a cratered, impassable sea of mud. Pinned down in the flooded support trenches of the Ypres sector was 19-year-old Corporal Samuel Rosbotham of the 7th Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers. On August 9th, a German artillery barrage struck his position. He was killed instantly. The tragedy of his loss is sharpened by a single fact. Exactly 24 hours later, his battered battalion was finally relieved. To understand the cost of a war this large, we have to look past the military statistics. We have to follow the archival paper trail to reconstruct the life that was cut short. To the War Office, he was a replacement draft. But on the streets of West Belfast, he was a significant human investment, a life we can still trace through the records he left behind. The story begins on Mayo Street in 1898. Samuel's parents, Stuart and Sarah, were already established in the neighborhood, where Stuart operated a small independent dairy. The 1901 census provides our first concrete proof of his existence. It documents Samuel as a 2-year-old toddler, likely riding alongside his father on the local dairy carts. He was raised in an intense sensory environment. His childhood home sat between the heavy iron trades and the deafening textile factories that defined the city's Indus skyline. The local economy revolved around places like Ewart's Mill on the Crumlin Road. Thousands of local women worked these vast, dense rows of spinning frames, producing the linen that made Belfast a global manufacturing hub. The family eventually moved out of the immediate shadow of the mills, securing a respectable red brick terrace at 32 Woodvale Avenue. This environment was highly structured and deeply communal. It served as a perfect training ground for the resilient young men the British Army would soon call to the front. By his teenage years, Samuel bypassed the textile mills to enter the massive shipbuilding industry on the River Lagan. The infrastructure of the shipyards was colossal. The massive steel gantries dwarfed the men working below, creating an environment of intimidating engineering scale. Samuel became an apprentice at Workman Clark, known as the Wee Yard. He worked in the precision of the mold loft, a world defined by the sharp smell of rancid tallow and the exactness of timber plans. The labor was dangerous and physically demanding. Men operated heavy hydraulic machinery and maneuvered massive steel plates to build hulls destined for the Atlantic. The yard's culture of physical endurance and its strict hierarchy provided an unintentional but effective preparation for the discipline of the trenches. The outbreak of war in August 1914 suddenly halted his apprenticeship. Samuel's life was rerouted from the shipyard to the recruitment office. As a Protestant from a Unionist area, he was expected to join the 36th Ulster Division, but the demand for reinforcements saw him drafted into a very different unit. He was sent to the 16th Irish Division, a formation largely associated with nationalist recruitment, becoming a rifleman in the 7th Battalion Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers. These young men trained intensely at Tipperary and Finnercamp, forging a unit that would land in France in February 1916. Samuel rose quickly to the rank of corporal. The technical skill and leadership he had practiced in the shipyard translated directly into the responsibilities of a non-commissioned officer. He was a highly capable NCO, representing the exact kind of skilled, protective leadership that Belfast was losing to the battlefields of Europe. By the summer of 1917, Samuel was in the Ypres salient. The battalion was facing the Flandern 1, a lethal German defense system of reinforced concrete pillboxes. We track his final days through the unit's war diary. Early August entries provide forensic proof of deteriorating conditions near Ypres. The log mentions that, owing to the very wet weather, the sector became a swamp, support lines collapsing into the sludge. On August 7th, the diary records intense artillery fire by Germans all along the British front, as heavy shells saturated the trenches where Samuel's unit was pinned down. This was the physical reality. Men sank to their knees trying to evacuate the wounded, fighting an environment as dangerous as enemy fire. Survival was no longer a matter of skill, it was a matter of chance. Artillery and mud were systematically swallowing the battalion whole. On August 9, 1917, the German artillery bombardment peaked. Large 5.9-inch shells crashed into the flooded support lines. The concussive power of these barrages was absolute. A shell of this size striking a static trench position left no possibility for survival. A shell struck Samuel's position, killing him instantly. His body was lost to the Flanders mud and never recovered for a formal burial. Today, he is commemorated on panel 22 of the Menin Gate, but in a final oversight, his name is entirely absent from the Workman Clark Shipyard Memorial back home in Belfast. His mother, Sarah, remained at 32 Woodvale Avenue for decades. She lived to see the next war arrive, as the Belfast Blitz brought fire and rubble to the streets Samuel left behind. Official records identify him as 3390. He was a dairyman's son and a shipyard apprentice, a young leader whose potential vanished just 24 hours before his battalion reached safety.